This is Matthew Kratters, Bitcoin University. Today is day 3 of discussing yet again a completely horrific topic. Today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin Core 30 software version 30 as being a CSAM relay service. And today's video is a follow-up to yesterday's video, which was called Will Blockstream Filter Out CSAM? I'll put a link to it in the description notes below. CSAM, of course, is one of the most horrific things in the world. It stands for Child Sexual Abuse Material. Quick summary of yesterday's video. Bitcoin Core is making changes to its node software beginning in October with version 30, Core 30, which will by default increase the amount of non-monetary data that nodes running the software will relay to each other. And it has plans to completely remove all configurability of this a few months later. They're raising the effective non-monetary data cap from 80 bytes to 100,000 bytes for op returns. That's crazy and irresponsible in itself, going from 80 bytes to 100,000 bytes, especially since we've had 80 bytes for about a decade, at least in Bitcoin Core. But it gets even crazier, and now I'm going to have to be really blunt here, so please excuse the fact that Bitcoin Core's absolute recklessness here is forcing me to have to discuss this disturbing subject again. So here it goes. 80 bytes of op return is not enough data to create the kind of graphic images or videos of illegal explicit content involving minors, what we call CSAM. We can also call it CP. It's not enough data to create the kind of graphic images or videos that pervs want to see. If we do look at this Google search, creating a true 80-byte image that is displayable by common image viewers is highly challenging due to the overhead of image file formats, etc. So 80 bytes is not a whole lot of data. But by contrast, 100,000 bytes is more than enough to create very graphic images and even short videos of this kind of content. So come October, or whenever this software update is released, any Bitcoiner who wants to run a Bitcoin node using Bitcoin Core will download this software. And if they run it using the default settings that have been chosen by Bitcoin Core devs themselves, they will be actively relaying large unconfirmed op return transactions all around the world that contain whatever crazy arbitrary data people or governments or whoever choose to put in them. And unfortunately, it's quite likely that that non-monetary data will contain CSAM. It might contain a lot of CSAM, unfortunately. This is the point at which the technical people who are the technocrats, you might call them, are saying, but they're paying transaction fees and helping to support the Bitcoin security budget. Yeah, sure, you can be an apologist for CSAM, but this is not an argument that I'm prepared to make. If you were a nation-state attacker, wouldn't you love to flood the Bitcoin network with CSAM and then use that as an excuse to turn public opinion against Bitcoin and Bitcoiners? Are you tired of having to explain to your aunt that you're not a professional drug dealer or terrorist just because you use Bitcoin? Are you looking forward to having the same discussion with friends and family and having to defend CSAM once unscrupulous politicians and the mainstream media learn what's been happening? Anyone who runs Core 30 software will be passing this filth onto other nodes on the network and helping this filth to find a miner who will mine it and include it in a Bitcoin block where it will remain forever. Now remember that Bitcoin is a monetary network. It's not just some network for arbitrary data. Bitcoin is a monetary network, and that's why we're all here. We shouldn't even be having this kind of discussion, and we wouldn't be having it if Bitcoin Core devs hadn't gone completely off the deep end and decided to try to push through a really big change really quickly without broad community support. Now, how do we know that Core has been losing community support? Because over 18% of the network has dumped this software, Bitcoin Core software, and is now running a safer version of Core, which is called Bitcoin Knots. 99% of the code is the same, and this other version of the software called Bitcoin Knots, this contains filters that will not relay op returns greater than 40 bytes, and thus will not be morally and legally culpable for relaying CSAM and actively helping to get it mined. We can see here that now 18.35% of the network is running Bitcoin Knots, as you should too. I'll put a link to this in the description notes below, and this will teach you how to run Bitcoin Knots for free. Blowing out the op return filter on Bitcoin is such a self-inflicted wound by Bitcoin Core devs. Are you going to be publicly defending these devs and helping them to raise money for their legal defense funds when they get arrested for having written code that turns Bitcoin into a CSAM file relay service? Because I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to be defending anyone who's making it easier to put CSAM on-chain as Bitcoin Core is doing these days. Think something like this could happen in America in 2028 if the Dems come back into power. You'll be hearing this from politicians about how Trump made $5 billion from his crypto scams, while Bitcoiners are now sharing CSAM with each other every day and helping to get it published to an immutable ledger. But don't devs of open source software projects in America have immunity? Please, please don't be so naive. They have immunity, of course, until the public and politicians decide that they don't have immunity anymore. And I'm not going to be the one going to bat for the CSAM enablers. If you think something like this couldn't happen, you're one of those people who pay lip service to adversarial thinking, but never really engage in it yourself. This is the time to be engaging in this kind of thinking. And also, this is another concern I have. Do not use this video to say that I'm attacking Bitcoin Core devs and opening them up to a host of legal and personal attacks, because it's the Bitcoin Core devs, they're the ones who are pushing through this contentious change, not me, and nearly 20% of the network has already turned against them. So the question here, will they show some humility here? Will they admit that they were wrong? Or are they going to go the way of ego and shoot themselves in the foot? Because this could get really, really bad, as Beautyon points out here. Disrupting Bitcoin, deliberately making it a tool that can also share illegal images with absolute certainty, will be classed as financial terrorism and network disruption. And the people who wrote the changes will be held liable and up for prosecution. Quote, I just wrote the code and I'm not responsible for what people do with it. That did not work for the developer of Tornado Cash, so don't even think of mounting that as a defense. These developers will have no excuse of ignorance either, because they've been very publicly warned not to do what they're planning to do. But in a fit of pique, they will have decided to do it anyway, and this will be trivially easy to prove, and therefore they will be held personally liable in the same way that worm and virus authors are personally liable for the damage they do to other people's networks and machines, simply because they released the code into the wild and other people ran it. Beautyon has another great post I wanted to refer to here. Beautyon writes, the choice is this. Number one, to run Bitcoin software. Bitcoin D just stands for, I believe, Bitcoin daemon, just running the client software. To run Bitcoin software that makes it easier to circulate JPEGs and keep Bitcoin, or to run Bitcoin software, node software, that makes it harder to circulate JPEGs and keep Bitcoin. If you can have Bitcoin software without JPEGs, why would you not opt for that? Why would you opt for circulating JPEGs? If your answer contains any of the following words: censorship resistance, you are a Fed, swearing, ad hominem, sub 1 sat per vbyte, you've missed the point. No one wants to run anything that explicitly allows malicious people to use their equipment and bandwidth to distribute filth as default network policy, in an attitude of resigned to evil, quote-unquote, acceptable compromise. People, of course, are free to run whatever software they want. You can run the version of Bitcoin software that allows others, and by allowing them, explicitly allows others to dump JPEGs onto your machine, or you can run Bitcoin knots if your sole interest is Bitcoin. It really is as simple as that. Any new version of a client that explicitly allows and encourages JPEGs is making it perfectly clear where they stand, and it's up to everyone to run what they want to run. What you should not do is use technical pretext to cover your desire to distribute CSAM or other forms of bad pictures. You should simply be honest and say, I am for the distribution of CSAM and other bad, nasty things on Bitcoin, rather than couch pretext in technical virtue signaling. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.